take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Super excited that you have dropped by today to give us a little listen. Appreciate that as always. How you can show your appreciation, especially in this month of March that we're in. Welcome to the madness, as I often say in this month of March. You can jump right over to opspodcast.com. Leave us a little review there if you desire that, or even just send us a little note of what you love, what you hate, what you whatever. We, of course, would love to know about that. If you're big on social media like most of us are nowadays, you can, of course, check us out at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And there, of course, you can follow us, like us, and tweet us there. Speaking of getting to know people and maybe getting to know people a little bit better, right? Because that's what social media is all about, is getting to know people better, getting to know things about them. Let me introduce you to our guest today. She is an author. In fact, she's authored this brand new book, which I'm excited about, and you equally should be just as excited. It is called Your Royal Rendezvous. What is that all about? Well, we're going to dig into that a little bit. She's also a speaker. She's a radio host. Oh, did I mention she's also a contributor to the Upbeat Reporter? She serves as a district-appointed interim pastor. She's also the district women's ministry director. A lot of pastoring going on in her life. She's also from the great city of Amarillo, Texas. And maybe if we leave right now, we can be in Amarillo by the morning. She's, of course, Leah Fort. Leah, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, and it is great to be with you today.
It is always sometimes great to be with people because I still think there is this powerful thing that we like to call connection, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So I want to lead off with you, Leah, if we can, before we get to my favorite question to ask people of all time. But before we get to that, why do you feel like connection is so important?
Connection is absolutely essential because without it, we cannot function. You have to have that connection with people. I mean, it's just absolutely necessary for each one of us.
Yeah. And again, I think that's just the power, right? It's the power of connection. We all need connection. So maybe we'll get down that road a time or two, hopefully today. But Leah, as we welcome you in, what style of shoe do you like to wear?
What style? Oh, my word. Well, if you ask my husband, he'd say all styles. I have a closet full, and it's really pathetic. No, actually, I enjoy every kind of style, but my favorite is probably a high heel. Yeah.
Oh, it is a high heel?
Yes.
Now, I got to ask, because as a guy, I know this might shock you right now in this moment. I've actually never worn high heel shoes. I know.
You should try it. You know, it's really good for your arch.
What style of, help me with this. Are there certain styles? Is there, like, I've heard of stiletto. Is that a thing? Help me again, because I really, truly don't know.
Stiletto is definitely a thing, and they look really great when you're trying to dress up, and you can dress up any outfit with a stiletto heel. Yes, and they are beautiful. They're very, very skinny, so if you're not used to wearing heels, they're probably very difficult to walk in.
So again, I feel like Bambi on ice. We had a guest a while back say she was wearing wedges, and I was like, I could get around wedges, but then I realized she wasn't talking about the potato wedges, the JoJo wedges, She was talking about the shoes, and then I had a really harder time kind of rallying around that. I felt like I'd be like a deer on ice, like Bambi, on ice. So maybe I'd be like that with stilettos. Yeah.
That's kind of what I feel like in flat shoes. Yeah. I don't like flats. They make me walk funny.
Now, does it make you taller? Is that part of the reason why you want to be taller, or help me with maybe that a little further?
It does make you taller for sure. And everyone in my family is very tall, so wearing heels for me is a great asset. Yeah.
All right. So if I put on heels, I'd probably be like 6'5", so I could actually play some hoops. Probably a little.
There you go.
So there we go. All right.
But could you jump? That is the question. Could you jump?
Ooh, no. White man still can't jump. Yeah. So there that is.
I'm so sorry.
But we always ask that question, right? Because I think it's important when we're talking to somebody to kind of know what shoes they've been in. They know what they've been walking through. They know what that experience has been like. Because I think empathy plays a key role. I think community and connection plays a key role.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were going to ask you this kind of question that we're really centering around this season with, this shadow moment, do you have that shadow moment for you? And maybe walk us through that. What was that like for you?
I absolutely do. Actually, I have two major shadow shadow moments that happened in my life. When I was 6 years old, I was molested by a teenager who was a member of our church. When this happened, actually, my dad was the pastor. This happened on a Sunday night after church. My sister and I had been playing in the churchyard. We were in a little tiny country town, and, so everybody knew everybody and all of that. And so everybody kind of hung out after church was over. So we were all playing in the churchyard, and my sister took all of our little girlfriends and they ran back into the church and kind of ditched me in the yard. I don't think they did it on purpose, but it's just what happened. And so they ran back in the church, and I thought, well, no big deal, because we have this really cool car. So I'm going to go play in the car. I have to tell you about the car itself. It was a 1967 Lincoln Continental. And I don't know how my dad came across this vehicle, because it was way out of our league as far as, pricing and all that kind of stuff. But I'm sure he had a good friend that made a good deal for him. But anyway, obviously this was a very long time ago, but we had this car, and I thought, I'm going to go play in the car because it had the suicide doors. And I thought it was the coolest car I'd ever seen because it had all electronic everything. And back then, cars didn't have locks on the steering columns. And so you could turn the radio on and you could play with all the electronic stuff in the vehicle. So I went over there to play, and I was just kind of on this imaginary journey. And I was just in there playing, and one of the kids came over and got in the car with me, and he just went on my journey with me and everything. And before I knew it, I had been molested by him. And when he got out of the car, he was a teenager. He was somebody I knew, trusted him. Of course, I didn't really understand what happened because I was 6 years old. When he got out of the car, he said, "You can't tell your parents because you'll get in trouble." Well, being a teenager and me being 6, I believed him. And so from that moment, he got out of the car. And I've always said that when he closed that car door, he also closed the cell door on my private prison. From that time forward, I did not ever tell anyone what had happened to me. Immediately after, probably that night or maybe the next night, I started having nightmares about that. It wasn't about the incident, but it was the result of where my mind went after that incident. One dream or nightmare was that I was running through the church, and I would go out through the front doors and go around through the yard, and I would just make this little circuit over and over and over again, like a hamster on a wheel. The dream was that these two men were chasing me, and so I was running away from them. And so I would wake up from that nightmare just, and usually crying. And another nightmare that started right within days, I would dream that I was in the school, and I was walking out to go to the playground. And how you have the blacktop, and then the playgrounds beyond that. We used to play on the blacktop a lot. And so I would be walking down that main corridor of that school, and to my right was the cafeteria, to the left were the restrooms, and right in front of me were about 8 of the big metal doors where you went outside. And as I was going out in this nightmare, I would be walking out, all the kids were coming back in. And I thought, I missed recess, and so they'd be coming back in. And then I would notice that they were looking at me, and they were kind of covering their mouths and laughing and talking to each other. And I would think, what's wrong with me? And I would look down, and I was either just wearing my slip and my shoes, or I didn't have any clothes on except for my shoes. And so then I would turn in my nightmare, and I'd run into the restroom crying, and then I would wake up crying. And of course, now I understand that was body shame. I was ashamed of myself, and I didn't really understand why. And so I carried this very dark secret with me all my life until I was in my 30s. And I got married, I had children, and I never told a soul, never told my parents, never told anybody. As I was driving down the street with my husband, I just felt like the Holy Spirit was talking to me and telling me to reveal to him what had happened to me. But before I tell you about that, let me tell you the other shadow that happened in my life. When I was 10, I was in the 5th grade. So that happened when I was 6. So when I was 10, we were living in another town, which actually we were living here in Amarillo. I was walking down the street with a good friend of mine, and we were walking down one of the main streets on our side of town. It was kind of funny. It was after school one afternoon. Her stepdad was the manager of the grill at a bowling alley that was near our house, about almost a mile from our house. And so we walked down there to get our free plate of fries and a Fresca, because we thought that was really cool that we could get something for free. So we walked down there, got our fries and Fresca, and had that, looked around to see if there were any of our friends hanging out at the bowling alley. Nobody was there. So we decided to walk down to the convenience store about a block down, went down there, got some candy, and we were on our way back. And we were across the street from that kitchen door. And so we got to that corner. My friend Deborah, she said, Leah, run. And I just looked at her like she was crazy. I thought, what in the world are you talking about? And she goes, run, just really loud. And she just bolted. And I thought, what are you doing? About that time, this car comes screeching out of the parking lot, and this man is yelling, I said, come here. It just caught me off guard. And I looked up because I didn't hear him the first time, and apparently she did. So he jumped out of the car, just threw it in park, jumped out of the car and grabbed me and tried to throw me into the car. I'm telling you, it was nothing but the grace of God that got me out of there, because I was a little 10-year-old. I just fought. I just, jerked around and kicked and did everything I could think of to get away. And I was able to get away. And when I did, I don't really know exactly what happened, but he kind of loosened his grip, I guess probably get a better hold of my arm. And when he did, I was able to pull away, and, my whole left arm, he just scraped all the way down. And all I could think of is I want to be inside that kitchen. So I don't remember my feet hitting the ground at all. I just remember going at the car, and then I was in the door. I just remember getting there and being inside. And what a beautiful, greasy sanctuary that was to get away. And of course, the police were called and all of that. And that was something, while it was something that happened and a police report was done and all of that, our friends would not talk about it. So it was another shadow in my life. I just carried all of these things throughout my life. Like I said, when I was in my 30s, my husband and I were driving down another street. Our children were at one of the grandparents' house. We were driving along there. The Holy Spirit just began to speak to me and tell me, you need to tell Mike what happened to you. And of course, I began to argue with the Lord. And I was like, no, I've lived my whole life. I've never told anybody, I'll be fine. And of course, that was futile, because the Holy Spirit was like, no, you need to tell him. And what happened was that as I told him, of course, I didn't need him to fix it, because he couldn't. I just needed to reveal to him, because that was the beginning of my healing from it, of carrying all that fear all my life. One of those moments of my healing, because I brought that darkness into the light.
So many questions come to my mind about both situations. First off, thank you for having the willingness to share those stories with virtually a total stranger. I always appreciate that and respect that. I have a 14-year-old daughter. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but, in your story, put her in your place. Maybe she's not wearing the stiletto shoes at the time. Maybe she's wearing some Velcro shoes, or childhood shoes look like.
Saddle Oxfords, but they were platforms, because this was in the 70s.
Nice. Are you talking the old school, like saddle shoes, like the black and white ones?
Well, yeah, but in the 70s, they weren't black and white. They were navy and khaki.
Nice.
They had the style,
okay.
but,
right.
The big platform and the heel. Because I'm old.
They got you where you're going, because
Yeah,
you had to
you
get
go.
away quick. At least in one moment, you had to get away quick.
And I looked good, hey.
Yeah, hey, I'm sure you did. I want to maybe look at both of them separately and then maybe join them together, as you did so eloquently. 6 years old, he took something from you that can never be given back.
Yes.
He robbed you of something that can never be returned.
Right.
He damaged something in you that can never truly be repaired.
Right.
I know God can redeem anything. Listen,
Sure.
my shirt says redemption right on it. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's still some emotional scars. Even when Christ went to the cross, he still bears the holes in his hands or wrists, depending on, how you want to interpret that.
Mm-hmm.
There's still the scars there.
Yes.
Has it been easy to forgive that gentleman?
For me, honestly, that was probably one of the easier things for me to do, because the Lord, he just helped me through it. It's one of those things when that happened to me, because of what he said and because of the way he left, I just repressed it. I just pushed it back. I never thought about it. The only time it came to my mind was in the night, from those nightmares, crying or breathing heavily or whatever. By the next morning, it was a distant memory, and I would just go to school, and I had a pretty normal life. And that's what I always say, on the outside, I looked very normal. I did a lot of normal things, but on the inside, I was just a mess. Being able to forgive him, I think, was probably fairly easy for me, because I didn't ever really hold it against him, because I didn't realize that was the core of the problem that I had, and that I understood I couldn't fix him. Forgiveness is a choice that I had to make. And so I just had to say, I have to forgive him. If God can forgive all of us, but me in particular, for the things that I had done against him. How could I not forgive someone for doing something when they were a kid themselves? He probably knew that what he was doing was wrong. I have no doubt about that, but he probably had no clue the damage that would come from that. Easy is probably not the right word. I was able to do it in a very short amount of time.
So at the time of you riding in the car with your husband,
Mm-hmm.
and you're on this road, and maybe it's a beautiful, maybe spring day, summer day, maybe it's a winter day, maybe it's a fall day, but you're riding along in the car and you're feeling that nudging from the Holy Spirit, that I would say true believers really know what we're talking about. Those that maybe don't follow the faith might struggle with that a little bit. It's this overwhelming presence that you truly can't even describe, but you just know it's not you. In that moment, though, what was your husband's reaction? What was he feeling?
Good question.
What was his response to all that?
I don't remember if it was spring or summer, but it was summer right in there. And in Amarillo, the wind blows a lot. And we were in his pickup. We had the windows down. He had an old, like an antique vehicle. So we're in that, and we had the windows rolled down, and just a gust of air came through the cab of the truck. And when that happened, it was just blew some dust around. And it was like the Lord used that moment to kind of stir all of that up in me. And that's how he began to reveal to me that I needed to talk to Mike about that. And so when I said, I'm just going to do it. And I said, Mike, I need to tell you something. And it was kind of, I must have had a strange sound in my voice, because he just kind of turned to me and he says, oh, okay. And so I began to tell him, and all he could say was, I am so sorry that happened to you. He said, I'm so sorry. I want to apologize on behalf of my species. Men did these things to you. He was very, very kind and just very understanding. And of course, he knew he couldn't fix it, and I didn't really need him to fix it. I just needed him to know what had happened. What's interesting to me is, as I think about it, I think, we'd already been married about 13 or 14 years when I revealed this to him. We'd been married for quite some time, and I had carried all of this. It probably affected a lot of things, the way I thought about things, even in marriage, that I didn't realize or connected to that. And I've actually told a lot of people, and in fact, this is in my book, my husband played in a band all the time. And so he was gone on Wednesday nights for practice, and then he was gone Friday night and Saturday night until about 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, because I traveled out of town. And so I would be at home by myself most weekends, and I hated it. I hated being there by myself, because I was terrified of being in my house by myself. Even though I knew there was nobody there, it was scary to me to be alone. And so I would fill my weekend full of my friends and going out to dinner and, just shopping and all of this stuff. And I would save all of my house cleaning to do overnight, Friday night and Saturday night. And I would do it during the night, because I didn't want to go to bed by myself. And I didn't realize all this fear was being driven by these things that had happened to me so long ago. And it began its treacherous work in me when I was a child, and it just carried through most of my life.
Well, Leah, you're an author. I think it's only fitting that we maybe hear that pen name. What is your author name that you go by in your books?
I use my given name, Leah Fort.
Leah Fort. I know this sounds silly, and this is kind of how my mind works, so bear with me a little bit on this one maybe. But I think you built a fortress around your heart.
Yes, I did.
Using your name is a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
But you built this giant fortress around your heart that nobody could get into, nobody could penetrate. You were never going to let anyone hurt you again, kidnap you, take you, scratch you,
right,
do things to you that is unconscionable to do to a child. Mm-hmm. And you locked it all away,
right,
and you threw away the key, mm-hmm, and you held yourself captive.
Yes, absolutely. Very apt description. Yes.
And the man who committed his life to you said, I do, courted you, probably is Prince Charming in a lot of respects. I'm guessing because you're beaming when you talk about him, by the way. Others can't see that, but I can, so I'm going to help with that. But you do beam when you speak of Mike. Your face gets a little lighter, your smile gets a little brighter, your eyes get a little wider. So Mike, I don't know who you are, but you seem like a pretty awesome guy if this lady's going to light up just at the sound of your name. So just want to put that out there.
He's pretty awesome.
But I build all that to say, why didn't you let him in? Him of all people. Why did it take so long to let him in?
I don't know. I truly cannot answer that question. I think because I had pushed it down so far, it was not something I ever thought about. I never thought about what had happened to me. I just pushed it away, pushed it away, pushed it away. And it came out in all of these other things. And it's interesting that you said I built a fortress around my heart and I wasn't going to let anyone penetrate that fortress. I became a perfectionist. So many different areas of my life, but at the same time, I was also very, very shy. Even in school, even if I knew the answer, I did not want them to call on me because I did not want all eyes on Leah. I just couldn't stand the idea of it. But at the same time, I was kind of a paradox because my mother and sister and I sang in a trio all the time. And so I was on the stage a lot on the platform of the church. And we started doing that when I was 3. I had that platform experience, but I didn't want to be in the center. I didn't mind being on the side. I was okay with that, but I didn't want to be the center of attention. And so it was just part of that, just that fear. It was just fear. Again, just in a different form. And I've said that perfectionism is fear on steroids because it's that fear of anybody knowing anything about you, of your real self. And so you become an achiever or an overachiever, or it's perfection on every level. I wanted my house to be perfect at all times. I wanted all the laundry done all the time. I wanted, that kind of stuff. And it probably drove my husband crazy. And he was probably thinking, oh my gosh, are you ever going to sit down? Do you ever relax? I'm sure that he probably thought that a lot of times. And I wasn't ugly about it and I wasn't mean about it, but I was just always busy at it.
I'm going to give you an acronym. I heard this years ago from a lady that played the church organ. So here we go. Thank you, Margaret. Shout out to Margaret. I don't even know if she's with Jesus now. She might be. It's been a number of years. I always used to say, she would ask me from time to time when I was on staff at a church. She said, hey, how are things going? And I was always say, well, Margaret, just busy. And she said, so you're busy, huh? And I said, yeah, always busy, always doing something. And she said, wow, burden of Satan's yoke? And she goes, yeah, you're busy.
Ooh, yeah.
No, I don't want to be under his yoke. She goes, well, clearly you are. I'm like, no. So I stopped saying I don't want to be busy anymore. Being under Satan's yoke, I was like, don't want that. No.
Oh my goodness. That's really good. I hadn't heard that.
One of my favorite quotes, I want to share this quote with you and get your thoughts on it, is out of the movie Shawshank Redemption. I don't know where you've been if you haven't, so I'm going to wreck it for you a little bit. There's this quote in the movie, and it says this, I have to remind myself that some birds, maybe we could even scratch out birds and put Leah, some Leah, aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. And when they fly away, the part of you that knows it was a sin to lock them up does rejoice. But still, that place you live in is that much more drab and empty that they're gone. I didn't write that. I think that was Stephen King, good. So clearly better author than I am.
Yeah.
But I like that quote for a lot of reasons because I think it reminds me that, again, some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. And I know it's easy to go back and play the what if and, all that. I mean, it's easy to do that. But have you ever allowed yourself to go back and say, if I continued to allow myself to be locked up there and not heard the Holy Spirit's prompting, just ignored it. It was just the wind. It wasn't the thing. And I mean, who knows? Maybe it was the tacos you ate the night before. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like if you just pushed it aside, what life would have looked like? Have you allowed yourself to do that in any way?
I have because, see, I've left out so many details of my life. When I was 9, so between these two events, when I was 9 years old, I was sitting in a church service. I was sitting with my best church friend in the balcony of a church, and it was here in Amarillo. And we're just little girls, sitting in this balcony of this church, and we're listening to a missionary. And this missionary has all these things laying out on the altar, just from her travels, just to show different things from her travels. And she was doing this slide presentation. We're sitting there and Kathy and I were just talking to each other and this slide came up on the screen and it was a slide of a big black cauldron over an open flame. And I thought, what in the world? Because as a child, you only think of witches, having that kind of stuff. And I thought, what in the world is that? So the next slide showed what was in that big black pot, and it was whole rat stew. And I remember sitting there and thinking, that's what I'm going to do. And I always say not eat rat stew, of course. I knew that the Lord was calling me into ministry. I always thought I would be a missionary into some foreign land or whatever, but I knew that the Lord had called me into ministry. And so I think, what if if I would have kept all of these things repressed, if I would not have listened to the Holy Spirit's prompting that day to reveal this and to bring it into the light, would I have been able to fulfill my call to ministry? And I think the answer is no, because I would have been disobedient by not sharing what happened to me.
You mentioned your book. I always love authors coming on. I do. I know some podcasts are like, author, we'll pass, whatever. But I get excited about authors. Only because maybe I'm a little envious at times, because I myself, to sit down and write a book would be an act of God. It would truly be a miracle. Like the New York Jets winning the Super Bowl would be a miracle. Me writing a book, equal miracle, okay? I am a better verbal processor, better verbal, well, some say better verbal communicator than I am a writer. So I'm always kind of like, I don't know how you guys do it, like just to sit down and do it. It's fascinating to me. In that, you write this book. I've looked at the reviews. I've read a lot of the stuff about it, what people are saying about it. What I haven't found yet, and so maybe I'm going to still look, nobody has asked what chapter was the hardest for you to write and why?
Ooh, good question. Golly. Well, I think the initial chapter portion, because I had to tell my story. That's probably the hardest part, because you relive it. When you tell it, you're reliving that moment and you're reliving all the result of it. I would say, yes, that is the hardest part. As you relive it, the tears come, the reliving, the retelling of it. And another portion of it, because I had never told my parents, my dad passed away many years ago, but my mother read the story. And that was when she found out what had happened to me. I'm sharing this with you, now that it's printed, I'm sharing this with you. And, so we got to talk about our lives and she got to ask me some questions, but that was probably the hardest part because of the reliving of the events.
Why not tell your parents before the book? I mean, obviously I get your dad because he's passed, but why not tell your mom before that, or even while your dad was still alive?
I just couldn't. I couldn't. My dad passed away before I even told my husband. So yeah, he was very young when he passed, and just cancer took him. So, that's what happened there. I just never could tell my mom. It's just one of those things I thought, does she really need to know? I never felt that prompting by the Holy Spirit to just go, you really need to tell your mom what happened. So when I wrote the book, obviously I protected all the identities and all that kind of stuff. But when I wrote the book and gave the book to her, I said, there's some things in here that you don't know about me. So she knew to expect something, from me in that regard. But it was really good to get to have that visit with her about it. Very healing.
Were you still a little bit fearful to share that with her?
I think that I was more fearful, not for myself. I was fearful for how that would make her feel. Because as a parent, if your child gets hurt, it makes you feel like a failure sometimes. And I didn't want her to feel that way, like she would take on some kind of guilt of responsibility of what had happened to me, because it wasn't her fault. Back when this happened, this would have been about 1969 or 70, I think 69. People just didn't talk about such things. Just wasn't a common thing. Or we didn't think it was as common because people didn't talk about it. And so I'm sure that she didn't think anything about all of the kids being out in the churchyard and, somebody coming over and getting in the car with us or whatever. I'm sure she never would have thought anything about it.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part sometimes, right? When we've held something inside so long and then we finally let it out. Yeah, I mean, there is a freedom there, but there's also still this fear. Is rejection going to come with that? Is judgment going to come
Exactly.
with that?
Are people going to believe me?
Especially as a woman, I would imagine. Again, I can't put on those stilettos as we already talked about. It's going to be a mess. But that's the other thing I think women, I would think, still walk in fear of. Is anyone going to believe me?
Yeah.
Do you feel like people believed you? I mean, I'm not questioning that by any means, but do you feel like there were those that maybe struggled to believe you because so much time had passed?
I don't think so. Because, and I've shared this too, like for me, that was a one-time event in my life. A lot of people, it's like over and over and over again, the same person does this to them, or different people throughout their lives do this to them. And for me, it was a one-time event. And I always think I can't imagine being that person who this happens to more than once because of what it did to me one time, and it affected me my entire life. And even though I feel very healed from that situation, and especially after having written the book and all of that, I feel very healed from it, and I can talk about it now without losing it, or whatever. But someone else goes through that, and I just think I can't even imagine some of the horrors that some people have been through.
Do you think this situation made you a better parent in some respects?
Probably in some regard, and probably in some respects, maybe a little overprotective at times, maybe.
I think that's natural, though, isn't it? I mean, if something traumatic like that happens to you, I think you're more, I don't want to say hypersensitive, but lack of a better phrase, a little more hypersensitive of where your kids are, who's with your kids, who's spending that time with your kids one-on-one.
Yes, absolutely. Very much so.
Well, Leah, I'm curious about this. Have you traveled around Amarillo at all? Or do you guys make your way around the area? I've, again, never been there, so I'm just imagining this whole just kind of Yellowstone 1880, kind of town, like just, Old West. Not accurate in any way, right? Not
well, you know what? Our area, this area is probably more like that than a lot of the other areas of Texas, because we're very agricultural here. It's a different kind of culture in this area. We're in I call it the crown of Texas, the top of Texas, and it's just the high plains area. So yeah, it's just grassy plains, and it is very cowboy country, agricultural, lots of oil and gas and cattle.
So I would not fit in there. I feel like I just
Now, Amarillo is kind of the hub of this part of the area, and Amarillo is about 200,000 people. So we're the quote unquote big city of the area. And so we have the big medical center and all that kind of stuff. And then Lubbock is a little bit further south, and they're in the plains area, just rolling plains and lots of wind and dirt and dust.
Must just do a number on your hair. Just asking for a friend. It's fine.
Big hair. That's why the girls in Texas have big hair, because the wind blows all the time.
Well, they do have this little arena out there. I just found out, the Amarillo Civic Center complex. You ever been there to see a rodeo or a show or anything?
I've been there to see lots of things.
Okay, fair enough. By the way, they estimate the seating capacity is about 7,000 people. I don't know. Does that sound about right? But somehow, some way, we put you in the middle of a rodeo, because that's fun, right? Rodeos are fun. I'm trying to think if I've ever even been to one. I don't think I have. We're kind of in that area too, Southern Oregon. We have a lot of 4-H. Like my friend Nick, he has animals that he raises. His kids do steers, and I think they're steers. I don't know. They do them at the fair, and there's a really stupid story about his animal getting out one night, and I didn't know how to put it back in, because I'm like, I don't know how to put the thing back in.
Because you're not an animal guy.
I'm an animal guy, but it's like a gigantic animal. It's not like a dog or a cat. Like I can kind of, shimmy, or a kid, like I can pick him up and, Anyway, it was in his driveway, and he's still mad that I didn't help put it back in. I'm like, what would you have me do? Yeah. But his dogs did get out the other night, and I did help him get his dogs in. So maybe a little bit of redemption on my part. Yeah. But back to you. This arena that we put you in, right? This rodeo's in town. Chris Ledoux's maybe, I don't know. He's probably not even alive anymore. But maybe he's there too, right? We have all these people from all walks of life in this audience, right? We have victims or people who have been hurt,
right,
or in some way affected by a molestation, maybe a failed kidnapping, right? Fitting right into your wheelhouse of your story. What would you say to that crowd of 7,000 folks?
I would say several years ago, my sister was a rape crisis nurse. And so she dealt with a lot of situations like that. And she said at that time, and I don't even know how old these numbers are, 1 in every 4 people, not just women, but 1 in every 4 people had been a victim of some sort of sexual molestation. And so, if you went through the audience and you said number off 1 to 4 and have all the ones keep standing and everyone else sit down, then you just go, oh my word, look how many people this is. And of course, I think that the number is probably closer to 1 out of every 3 now. When you look at all of those people, what I would say to them is you can't fix the person who did this to you. You have to let go of that. And that's what forgiveness is all about. It's making that choice to say, I can't change them, but I can change how I respond to what happened to me. And what I do with this from this moment forward is what really matters. I have to choose to forgive, and I have to say, okay, what is the issue that I have? And actually in my book, it's actually, I give a 5-step process. And it's, first of all, you have to confront the problem. You have to realize what the problem is to start with. Now, everyone is not going to be able to identify that person that did this thing to them, or like I can, because I can go back to that event. Maybe they have repressed it so much they don't know. Maybe they just can't identify what really started all of these issues in their lives. You confront the problem. You go, okay, my problem is fear, or my problem is whatever whatever. Sometimes the problem is maybe their own sin. Maybe it's not that they were subjected to someone else's sin, but maybe they have chosen a sin and they're just walking in that guilt of it. So you got to confront that. And then you got to bring it down. You got to collapse it. You take all of that and you collect the right things about yourself. Get rid of all the junk, collapse all of that, bring in all the right things, convert that information, and then you connect to life and more effectively. And that's what bulk of the book is about. But then how do you do all of that? How do you connect all of it? Through prayer. And that's what your royal rendezvous is. It is having a rendezvous with the King of Kings every single day. Make sure that you create that time with him, because that is where your healing is going to happen. And that's what I would tell them.
I think that's powerful. That's a great message to be reminded of, and obviously not forgotten, because I think, like we said at the onset, this connection, this idea of making time for people and having that synergized moment, whether it be your Father in heaven or a friend at a coffee shop. I think we can still go to those nowadays. I hope so.
We can in
the rodeo, whatever it may be. I think it's so powerful to have that rendezvous.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I love that word. That's a good word. I also came across one more quote. If I think we have time. I'm being told we have a little more time. One more quote for you. I don't know what you're going to think about this one. I like quotes. Sorry.
You're fine.
Forgive me, but I do. It says, "The joy is the sprinkle of life." That already just grabbed my attention. With every person we encounter, we have an opportunity to leave a sprinkle of joy of the Lord with them. Who on earth wrote that, and where did they come up with it? Do you know anybody that could help with that?
I don't know. Who would have said that? Joy is the sparkle of life. And when you have the Lord's joy, it does make you sparkle, because you can share it with other people. And when we're full of the joy of the Lord, people see that in us and they want to know what we have. And maybe they can't really identify that. They go, wow, how can you be joyful in this situation that's going on in your life? Or how can you have so much peace? And that's what we want to share with the world, because then we get to tell them, here's how, and you can have it too. And that's what matters.
A very good friend of mine, his daughter, I got to meet her a number of years back, and she was younger. She's probably about 4 years old, probably 5 years old. And I asked her, I said, she was wearing moon boots, by the way, in the middle of summer. Yeah. So there's that. Maybe you can relate. I don't know. But anyway, so she's wearing these moon boots, and I said to her, I said, hey, I love your boots. They were like sparkly and pink and, girly, yes. Right? And I said, I love your boots. I said, what's your favorite color? And she goes, pink and sparkles. I was like, wait, sparkles is a color now? Yeah. And I looked at my buddy and he goes, absolutely, sparkles is totally a color. You got to know. I'm like, I don't see that in the crayon list. Sparkle.
Yeah, glitter.
So Leah, if people are interested and they want to have this royal rendezvous, or they want to learn how to have a royal rendezvous, which I think is also important, right? The aspect of teaching and learning and growing, right?
Right.
Where can people go to pick this amazing book up? Where can they do that?
They can get it, of course, on Amazon.com. You can get it anywhere books are sold, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, anywhere, Walmart, Target, any of the .coms, you can get it. So, and it comes in a hardback or softback or e-version.
So Leah, I don't want to correct you, because you've worked really hard to get the book out and promote it and get it out to those places, right?
Right.
But you did, you mentioned you were old. I'm not saying that, by the way. You said that, just to be clear.
Yeah.
You did say that, right?
You're
acknowledging that? Okay. Maybe in your age, walking delicately here, you might have forgotten a place. No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm gonna help. You did forget a place.
I did.
Because it's also going to be at opspodcast.com/books that I love. It'll also be available there. So if people are like, wow, I didn't hear all those places, just remember that place. It'll be up towards the top, not the tippy top, because that's reserved towards the top. And people can go there and link there and get it there. So
very good.
Just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
You're not old. Just in case your guy hears this back, he's like, wow, I'm going to have to go out to Oregon, show him what's up with some cowboy boots, some spurs. I'm not calling her old.
Oh, goodness.
Leah, last thing goes to you on this, and then we're going to play a game together. Are you okay with games?
Oh, my goodness. I hope so.
All right.
I may be really bad at it.
It's all right. We'll see. We'll see how well you do. It's,
okay.
Right. It's not a trivia game, so don't worry about that. It's not like name 5 North Carolina basketball players. That should be a game, but it's not. Thankfully. But in all seriousness, I know we've had some giggles and we've had some laughs, and rightfully so. We need to have the good with the tears sometimes, right?
Sure, absolutely. Yes.
But if somebody's hearing you right now and they've been where you are, but the problem is they're still stuck in that shadow.
Yes.
They're still afraid to walk out into the light. As I say, out of winter into spring.
Yes.
Because it's kind of fitting of the groundhog. But if they're seriously right now hearing you and they're like, you know what, she was brave. She's just braver than I am. She's just stronger than I am. She's just smarter than I am. She's just got a better support system. She's got better hair. She's got the better. And they're playing the better game.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still wanting to be stuck. They're still wanting to be hiding in the shadow. What would you tell these ladies or maybe even men right now? What would you tell them in this moment?
I would say, no, don't get stuck in the comparison game. And whatever happened to you is individual to you. And the Lord can heal all things. And the Word of God tells us that by the stripes of Jesus, that we find healing. And that is for every kind of healing. That is for spiritual healing first, of course, but it's also for emotional healing and physical healing and whatever kind of healing we need, relationship healing. And the Lord can bring that kind of healing to you, just like he did to me. And it doesn't matter what happened to you or why it happened or how it happened. He can bring that healing to you.
Because the why it happened will keep you there, won't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Because you just play it over and over and over again. And you can't answer that question. We don't have the answer to that other than we live in a fallen world and sin abounds and people do stupid things sometimes. People do stupid things a lot of times. So we're victims of it sometimes. And sometimes we're the one creating the problem, but God can heal all of that.
Well, and I think it's important to say too, that you can walk out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can seek forgiveness.
Absolutely.
But you don't have to continue to go back to that person and associate with them. You don't have to go be their best friend. You don't have to, you don't have to do any of that.
That's right.
But I think we are called and I'm lumping myself in there. Maybe I shouldn't. I believe you would say you are called to still forgive, even as painful as it may be. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. Forgiveness does not mean that you open up the door and try to create this wonderful relationship, because the likelihood of that is not very good, because we're not God. We don't forget. God forgives and forgets. He throws those things away, but we don't have the ability to do that because we're not God. And we don't want to open ourselves up and make ourselves vulnerable for that same kind of pain over and over and over again with the same person. And a lot of us, and I can relate to this, we've been in relationships, maybe a friendship or something, where somebody just continually hurts us, or like they're submarining everything we try to do. And you just go, why do I get a torpedo from you every time I try to do something? And it's because out of their own insecurities, they hurt other people. And sometimes you just happen to be that target. I've been in a relationship where I was the target up for all of their angst. And I just lived with it over and over and over again. And I had to keep on forgiving. And I know that the Lord allows those things sometimes in our lives to teach us, to help us learn how to forgive better. And I know he used that with me, but he does do that. And we can forgive, but you don't have to be best friends with that person.
So if you weren't married to your amazing husband, if he wasn't the man of your dreams, and again, just as like I said, I just mentioned him and you just like light up like a tree, like a Christmas tree. It's amazing. It's fun. It's awesome. Why was he such a great support for you?
Oh, goodness. Golly. Like, what did he do?
Well, yeah. Like, what did he do? How did he show you? How did he honor you in all this?
He's very, very loyal, very true, very trustworthy. So like I said, I've left a lot of little details out of my healing process and all of that. But there was one time where I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, and it was during this time of healing, I woke up in the middle of the night. It was pitch black. And I thought, what in the world is going on? And I couldn't move. I felt paralyzed. And I called out his name and I asked him to pray with me. When I say paralyzed, I mean, I was paralyzed by fear, but I was physically paralyzed. I just kept calling out to him. I didn't have a voice. I was going, got enough air that I could say to him, I need you to pray. And he just kind of was real groggy and what, and I said, there is something in here, because all of a sudden I realized this is a spiritual thing that was coming over me. And so I just asked him to pray with me. And I think that is the big thing with our relationship, that we are spiritually, we're on the same page. And so we pray together a lot. And we had already started that, from long time before all of this happened. And so he was a spiritual support as well as an emotional support, and just very loving and very helpful. And like I said, I didn't need him to try to fix anything, because he couldn't, and he knew he could not do that. But he wanted to help me find healing.
Well, and again, I know some ladies are like, wow, so he's on a Hallmark movie. He's like man of the year. He's a
not
Texan.
Silver Fox.
So by default, because he's a Texan, I've heard like men down there are just cut from a different cloth. I mean, I have a really good friend in Sugarland in Houston. Like he's cut from a different McCoy even. That's a little play on his name. Ladies, listen, you don't need Mike per se, but you need to find somebody like Mike. We want to find somebody like Mike. Like to quote Gatorade, we want to be like Mike. We want to find I'm like Mike. And we want to find that person that can provide that healing, that comfort, that rendezvous. And it doesn't even have to be a dude. It can be a girlfriend. It can be a colleague. It can be somebody, but don't live in the shadow any longer, right?
Exactly.
Leah?
Yes, exactly.
So, all right, Leah, here's our game. It's a game we like to call senseless. It's just something silly that we've already had some silliness, but more silliness perhaps as we end out our show today. But I do want to say before we play our game, thank you. Thank you so much again for coming on, sharing your story. I know it's powerful, and I know people when they get their hands on the book, it really could be life-changing for them if they allow it to allow that rendezvous to truly take place, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I pray, that is my prayer, that people's lives are ministered to and encouraged, that they can walk in victory, triumph over tragedy, for sure.
Fantastic. So thanks so much for that. All right, so here's our game, Senseless. I don't know if you're a big sports fan or not, but I do.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know why, but I do have a North Carolina Cup. I mean, it matches the room. I know it's weird, right? A lot of North Carolina stuff. Could you root for them this year? They need some more fans because we're doing terrible.
Oh, God.
If you
what am I
Mike
going to
could
do about my Texas teams? I mean, come on. What do I do?
You're talking hook 'em horns?
Yeah. Talking hook 'em horns. We're talking Texas Tech. We're talking TCU. I mean, there's so many.
You just picked just random Texas schools?
Yeah, just like them all.
Just them all. Just like them all. There's room at the table for all of the Texas schools.
Yeah.
Aggie? Nobody wants to be an Aggie. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, my word. I can't believe you said that.
Oh, very offensive. So I couldn't find my Aggie cup, apparently. Or my Red Raider cup or my Longhorn cup. I didn't even think they make those. But anyway, here we are. I'm going to roll because I'm getting in trouble here. You okay if I roll on your behalf? I'm not going to cheat.
Do it.
All right, so here we go. You got a number 5. See, I'm getting in trouble with my Texas stereotypes today. I'm guessing being in Texas and being from Texas and probably born and bred, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
You've probably tasted some amazing things. So my question to you is, what is your favorite thing to taste?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's terrible. Because there are so many great things in Texas. The most...
I've never been there. Okay. Thank you. My brother-in-law went without me.
Oh, my.
That's another story for another time. But yes.
The most unusual thing that I've ever tasted was alligator. And it was awesome. It was excellent. Fried alligator. You got to try it.
Did it truly taste like chicken?
No, it has its own flavor, but it's very white. It's like white. The color of it is like white fish. It's white, but it is so good. Let's see. In Amarillo, the best foods are Tex-Mex. Can't lie. That's it. Those are my favorite flavors. Yeah.
All of a sudden, my friends down in Florida are really sad because they just eating their alligators.
We have alligators here too.
Well, Leah, thank you again so much for coming on. I truly appreciate it. You're a gem. I wish you all the success humanly possible with the book. Hope it does well. Thank you for giving us some moments today. So guys and gals, kids and campers alike, listen, let me tell you something. I know we all have that proverbial secret. Come on, we do. That thing we do, that thing that happened to us that nobody knows about, that is so far locked away. There's like 7 padlocks around that door. You've built, as I alluded to in the episode, you've built a fortress around your heart. You're like, nobody's getting in here. I don't care how good Mike is. Nobody's getting in here. Nobody is ever going to get into me. Nobody's ever going to hurt me the way they did. Nobody is ever going to break my trust the way they did. Nobody's going to rob my innocence the way they did. No, Neil, I'm not going to do it. Okay, fine. But can I ask why? Why aren't you going to let somebody in? What is the harm in that? Is that cell that you're in just really warm and cozy? Because I bet it's not. I bet it's scary. I bet it's drab. I bet it's boring. And I bet it lacks community. So today, this day, I want you to come out of that. I do. I truly do. I want you to find somebody you trust. I want you to reach out to them this week and just say, listen, let's go grab some coffee. Let's go grab a cup of tea. I just need to tell you something. And put it on the table. And just tell them at the start. Say, listen, I don't want you to fix it. I don't want you to solve it. I don't want you to hand me a tissue box. I don't want you to hug me just yet. I just want you to listen. Can you do that for me this week? Can you offer that to friends? Just say, hey, listen, I know you might not be dealing with this, but if you are, I am willing to raise my hand. I volunteer as Katniss did. I volunteer as tribute. I'm here to help. I'm here to listen. Let's make that happen this week, shall we? You with me on that? Hope so. With me on this too, I hope. Just remember this. Do not ever forget. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.